The war between humans and the alien race called Valari had ended months ago, but the world was still broken. The cities stood like empty skeletons of stone and steel. Roads were covered in dust and memories, and the laughter of families had become a rare sound. Peace had arrived, but it was quiet. Too quiet, like a wound that stopped bleeding but never healed. In the middle of this broken land walked a man named Ethan Hale. He was not wearing his soldier uniform anymore. Instead, he wore an old brown coat, patched at the shoulders, and his boots were torn from long journeys. His face was tired, his beard a little rough, and his eyes looked like they had seen too many goodbyes. He wasn't a hero in stories. He was just a man who survived, but Ethan was not alone. Behind him walked 5 children. None of them were his by blood, but all of them walked like they belonged with him. The oldest was a human girl named Mary, around 12 years old, carrying a small backpack with all their food. Next was Tavi and Rin, 2 half-Valari brothers with silver lines on their faces and human-shaped eyes. Then came little Juno, a quiet blue-skinned child from a species Ethan didn't even know the name of. And the smallest one, a human toddler named Eli, always holding Ethan's finger as they walked. They were not from the same family, not from the same race, not even from the same planet, but Ethan had found each one alone, crying, hungry, forgotten by the war. He didn't ask questions. He just offered them his hand and said, "Come with me. You're safe now." Some people called him a fool. Some called him a thief of orphans. Some even called him a traitor for protecting alien children. Ethan didn't care. His heart had already lost too much to care about names. That day, they reached an old abandoned farmhouse near the forest. The roof was broken in some places, the door hung on one hinge, and there were weeds growing between the stones, but it was still a roof. It was still shelter. It was enough. "Is this our new home?" little Eli asked in a sleepy voice. "For now," Ethan said gently, lifting him into his arms, until the world stopped shaking. They cleaned the dust inside. Mary swept the floor. Tavi and Rin fixed the door as best they could. Juno found a broken chair and smiled proudly when she made it stand again. Ethan started a fire in the old stone fireplace, and for the first time in days the room felt warm. That night, after giving the children bread and water, Ethan stepped outside. The moonlight covered the field in silver. The air was cold but peaceful. He looked at the stars and whispered, "If anyone is listening, I'm trying. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but I'm trying." His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. What if he failed them? What if someone came to take the children away? What if kindness wasn't enough to survive? Before he could think more, he heard a soft sound. A branch snapped. Ethan turned sharply. Near the broken fence stood a figure, tall, silver-skinned, bleeding, a Valari woman. Her eyes were full of pain and fear. Ethan didn't reach for a weapon, he just stood still. The woman tried to speak, but her voice was weak. "Please, don't hurt me." Ethan slowly raised his hands. "I won't, you're bleeding. Come inside." She stared at him, shocked. No human had ever said that to her, and just like that, everything began to change. The cold night air wrapped around the farmhouse like a ghost when Ethan stepped forward to help. The silver-skinned woman stood weakly near the fence, her legs trembling. Blood, dark purple and shimmering like ink under the moonlight, flowed from a wound on her side. For a moment she looked like she might run. Then her knees gave up. Ethan rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin felt cold, almost like metal left outside in winter. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You don't have to be afraid," Ethan said quietly, his voice calm as water. "You're safe here." She blinked slowly as if she didn't understand the meaning of that word. Safe. From inside the farmhouse, Mary's voice called, full of worry, "Ethan? Is everything okay?" Ethan looked back. Mary stood at the door, eyes widening at the sight of the alien woman. "It's all right," Ethan said gently. "Bring some water." And clean cloth. The children didn't scream. They didn't run. They had seen enough pain in this world to recognize it in others. Ethan carried the woman inside and laid her on an old wooden table. Her breath was shallow. Her silver hair stuck to her forehead, wet with sweat. Her long fingers curled tightly like she was still expecting a knife. Mary returned with water and cloth. Tavi and Rin stood by the door, nervous but silent. Even little Eli, clutching his toy, stared with big eyes. Ethan dipped the cloth in water and cleaned her wound slowly. The woman winced but did not resist. "You help me?" she whispered in a voice that sounded like wind over broken glass. "Yes," he said simply. "Why?" Ethan paused, then answered, "Because you're hurt. That's enough reason." The woman stared at him like he had spoken a language she had never heard before. Hours passed. The fire crackled softly. The children slept on blankets near the hearth, their breathing slow and peaceful. Only Ethan stayed awake, sitting near the table, watching the woman's chest rise and fall. At some point, her eyes opened again. "You should rest," Ethan said, not looking away from the fire. "I cannot," she whispered. "Your people, they will kill me if they find me." "My people?" Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "I don't think I belong to any people anymore." Silence filled the room again, but it was softer this time. "What is your name?" Ethan asked. "Lyra," she said faintly. "Daughter of House Sareth, or what is left of it." "I'm Ethan," he said. "Just Ethan." She studied his face carefully. His eyes were tired but gentle. There was no hate in them. "You travel with human and alien children," she said. "Why?" Ethan looked at the sleeping children. "Because someone had to." A small, fragile smile appeared on Lyra's lips like a flower blooming in winter. The next morning, sunlight entered through the broken window. Birds sang softly in the distance. Lyra tried to sit up, but pain shot through her side. "Easy," Ethan said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're still healing?" Lyra looked around the room. Mary was braiding Juno's blue hair. Tavi was mending a shoe. Rin tried to make Eli laugh by making funny faces. It looked like a broken family trying to become whole again. "Why are they not afraid of me?" Lyra asked. "They've been hurt too," Ethan said quietly. "They know what fear feels like. So they choose kindness instead." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever treated her like she was more than a weapon or an enemy. For the first time since the war began, she felt human, or something better. Days passed quietly in the old farmhouse. The air smelled like smoke and bread, and at night the wind whispered through the broken windows. Lyra's wound slowly healed under Ethan's careful hands. She still moved with pain, but there was color in her silver cheeks again, and her voice no longer shook when she spoke. The children were no longer afraid of her. Instead, they followed her like small stars follow the moon. Mary asked her about Valeri constellations. Tavi and Rin begged her to teach them alien words. Little Eli would sit beside her and fall asleep with his head against her arm. Lyra didn't know how to be a mother, but she found herself brushing Mary's hair, tying Tavi's cloak straight, and whispering lullabies from her planet when Eli cried at night. She didn't understand why her heart hurt in a good way when she did these things. One evening, the sky was deep blue and full of stars. Ethan sat outside near a dying fire, sharpening an old knife. Lyra stepped out quietly and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You should rest," he said without looking at her. "I rest too much," she murmured, sitting on a stone beside him. They stayed silent for a while. The flames crackled. Crickets sang. Somewhere far away, a ruined machine groaned in the wind. Lyra gazed at the stars. "Do you miss your home?" Ethan paused. "My home is gone. The town I was born in, it burned when the war reached it." "I am sorry," she said softly. He shrugged lightly. "And you? Do you miss yours?" "My home still stands," she said. "But it no longer feels like mine." Ethan looked at her. Her eyes reflected the firelight. full of loneliness she had carried too long. She took a deep breath. "There is something I should tell you." Ethan nodded, waiting. "My people, I was chosen to become a life mother, to carry the next generation of Valari. But during the war, I was injured. The healers tried, but..." She looked down, hands trembling in her lap. "I cannot have children anymore." The words hung in the cold air. Lyra's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. "In my world, a woman who cannot give life is nothing, useless, forgotten." She expected him to look away, to pity her, or worse, to agree. But Ethan didn't do any of those things. He smiled, a small, sad, warm smile. "Good," he said calmly. Lyra blinked in confusion. "Good?" Ethan pointed to the farmhouse where the children slept inside. "I already have enough kids for both of us." Lyra stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She had never heard something so strange, so simple, and yet so kind. "You don't think I'm broken?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "Lyra, being a parent isn't about blood. It's about choosing to stay, to protect, to love anyway." A single tear rolled down her silver cheek. She quickly wiped it, embarrassed, but Ethan pretended not to see. The stars above them were quiet witnesses. Lyra looked at the children through the window. Juno was hugging her blue blanket. Tavi and Rin were asleep side by side. Eli was curled like a kitten on Mary's lap. "They are not mine," she said, but her voice was soft. "They don't have to be," Ethan replied. "They just need someone who won't leave." Lyra closed her eyes, and for the first time since the war stole her future, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could still build a new one, not by giving life, but by giving love. Morning sunlight touched the old farmhouse like gentle fingers. Smoke from the kitchen fire curled into the air as Mary boiled water and tried to make breakfast from whatever little grain they had left. The children's laughter echoed softly, mixing with the sound of birds in the trees. For a moment it felt like peace. Lyra stood near the wooden fence outside, her silver hair brushing the breeze. The pain in her side was mostly gone, but the pain in her heart still lingered. Every time she watched Ethan with the children, something inside her ached, something warm, confusing, and scary. Ethan was fixing a broken wagon wheel with Tavi and Rin. His hands were strong, steady, calm, hands that had once held guns, now holding tools instead. Every so often he would smile at the boys, and they would smile back shyly. Lyra didn't understand how a man who had seen so much death could still smile like that. Suddenly, a soft tug on her hand pulled her from her thoughts. It was Eli, the smallest child. His big brown eyes stared up at her. His voice was small as a whisper. "Lyra, can you tie my shoes?" Lyra blinked, surprised. "Me?" He nodded. "Ethan says you're better at it." Her heart skipped. She knelt carefully, her silver fingers trembling a little as she tied the small worn-out laces. Eli watched her with quiet trust. When she finished, the boy threw his tiny arms around her neck. "Thank you, Mama Lyra." She froze. "Mama." The word echoed inside her like a bell. Before she could answer, Eli ran off to chase Juno. Lyra remained still, one hand on her chest, as if trying to stop her heart from breaking and healing at the same time. That night, when the children were asleep, Lyra sat by the fire. Ethan brought 2 cups of warm tea and handed one to her. She wrapped her hands around it, enjoying the warmth. "I don't know how to be what they think I am," she said quietly. Ethan didn't pretend not to understand. "You don't have to be perfect. Just stay." Lyra looked into the fire. "What if I hurt them? What if someone comes for me and they are in danger because of me?" Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "Then they'll have me too. They won't face it alone." Lyra turned to him. "Why do you care so much? About them? About me?" He smiled sadly. "Because someone cared for me once, and I couldn't save them. But I can save these kids. I can save you." His words were simple, but they wrapped around her heart like a blanket in winter. But peace is like glass. Beautiful, but easy to break. 3 days later, they heard it. The sound of engines. Distant, but coming closer. Ethan's face changed. He stood quickly, his jaw tight. Everyone inside now. The children ran into the house. Lyra followed, panic rising in her chest. She could feel it. Danger like a storm in the air. From the window, Ethan saw them, 3 military vehicles, carrying armed men wearing the emblem of the Human Reconstruction Force. Soldiers, not enemies anymore, but not friends either. Ethan's breath was steady, but his eyes were sharp. Stay hidden. Don't make a sound. Lyra grabbed his hand.
Ethan, if they see me, they will kill me.
And if they see the children? He squeezed her hand gently. I won't let them. Her voice broke. You can't fight an army alone. He gave a small, tired smile. Watch me. And he stepped outside. Lyra watched through the cracks in the wooden wall, breath shaking. Ethan stood alone in the yard, coat blowing in the wind, facing the line of soldiers approaching. The peace they had built was trembling, but Ethan stood like a wall between the world and his family. And for the first time, Lyra was truly afraid, not for herself, but of losing him. The air was heavy, filled with silence before a storm. Soldiers stepped out of the vehicles one by one, their boots crunching against the dry earth. Their uniforms were clean, their guns shining under the pale sun. They were not here to talk. They were here to take control. At the front stood Captain Rhodes, a man Ethan once served under. His face was lined with age and pride, his eyes sharp as a blade. Well, Rhodes said slowly, looking at Ethan. Never thought I'd see you hiding in farmland, playing father to strays. Ethan didn't move. They're not strays. They're children. Rhodes's eyes narrowed. Human children, maybe. But I see alien ones too. Half-bloods, demons from the enemy's womb. Ethan's jaw tightened. They're innocent. Innocent. Rhodes scoffed. Their kind burned cities. Killed our people. Ethan stepped forward. And humans did the same to them. War is over, Captain. Let it go. Rhodes ignored him and gave a signal to his men. Search the house. Ethan moved quickly, blocking their way. No one enters. The soldiers hesitated. Rhodes stared. Move, Sergeant. That's an order. I'm not a soldier anymore, Ethan replied softly. I'm a guardian. Inside the farmhouse, Lyra held her breath, one hand over Eli's mouth to keep him quiet. Mary clutched Juno's hand tightly. Tavi and Rin stood pressed against the wall, their hearts pounding. They could hear every word. Lyra's legs trembled. She was afraid, yes. But more than fear, there was something else in her heart. Anger. How dare these men come to take what little peace they had found? Outside, Rhodes stepped closer to Ethan. You were a good soldier once, he said. Don't throw your life away for aliens. Ethan said nothing. Rhodes nodded to a soldier. Aim. The soldier raised his rifle, pointing it straight at Ethan's chest. A scream tore through the air. Stop. The farmhouse door flew open. Lyra stepped out. Her silver hair blew in the wind. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were burning with courage. Please, she said, voice trembling but strong.
Do not hurt him.
I will come with you, just... Leave the children. Ethan turned sharply. Lyra, no! Rhodes stared, surprised. So the rumors were true. A Valari hiding here. Lyra lifted her chin. Yes, take me, kill me. Do what you want, but let them live. They are only children. They did not cause your war. For a moment, everyone was silent. The soldier's gun still pointed at Ethan. Ethan's voice was sharp. Lyra, go back inside. She shook her head, tears shining in her eyes. I won't let you die because of me. Captain Rhodes laughed coldly. How touching. A human and a Valari protecting each other. He raised his hand to signal. And then... tiny footsteps. Little Eli ran out from behind Lyra and hugged Ethan's leg. His small voice broke the silence. Please don't take Papa. Rhodes froze. Ethan gently pushed Eli behind him. Lyra pulled the child close. The captain's eyes moved from the child, To Ethan. To Lyra. Something in his expression softened. Just for a moment he lowered his hand. Get in your vehicles, he told his soldiers. They looked shocked.
Sir?
That's an order. The soldiers obeyed. Rhodes turned to Ethan one last time. You keep them far from the cities. If the council finds out, I won't protect you again. Ethan nodded. I never asked you to. Within minutes, the vehicles turned and disappeared into the dust. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was full of tears held back. Lyra stepped toward Ethan. You could have died. So, could you? He said softly. Her voice broke. Why did you protect me? Ethan looked at her, eyes tired but full of warmth. Because family is worth fighting for. Lyra's heart, once broken by war, finally understood she was no longer alone. After the soldiers left, the farmhouse felt different. Safe, yet fragile, like a candle still burning after a storm, alive but shaking. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat outside on the wooden steps watching the stars, the cool wind brushing his hair. His mind was heavy with worry. What if they come back? What if he fails the children? What if he fails her? Inside the farmhouse, Lyra lay awake too. Eli slept beside her, his tiny hand holding her sleeve. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the quiet breathing of the children around her. But her mind was not calm. It was full of Ethan. The way he stood in front of guns for her. The way he didn't flinch when death stared at him. The way he said family is worth fighting for. She had never known a man like him. Finally, she stood up quietly, careful not to wake the children, and stepped outside. Ethan heard the door creak and turned. Can't sleep either? He asked. Lyra shook her head and sat beside him on the steps. The night air was cold, but sitting near him felt warm. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of unspoken things. Thank you. For today, Lyra said softly. Ethan shrugged, trying to smile. You don't have to thank me for choosing what's right. She looked at him, eyes shining gently. Most people don't choose it. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You were willing to give yourself up. To save us. I was willing to save you, she whispered. Their eyes met. Something stirred in Ethan's chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not the fear of dying, but the fear of needing someone again. Ethan, Lyra said gently, why do you carry all this alone? He looked away. Because when I loved someone before, I lost them. My wife, my son. The war took them. I couldn't save them. Lyra's heart ached. She reached out slowly and touched his hand. You couldn't save them, she said softly. But you saved us. Ethan glanced at her hand resting on his, then at her face. There were tears in her eyes, not of pain, but of understanding. You are not alone anymore, she whispered. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then quietly, he turned his hand and held hers. Lyra's breath caught. His hand was warm, strong, real. Maybe she wasn't alone anymore either. The next days were softer. Lyra laughed more. Mary said she smiled in her sleep. Juno followed her like a shadow. Tavi and Rin asked Ethan if Lyra was going to stay forever. One afternoon, while hanging washed clothes under the sun, Lyra heard Eli call Ethan Papa and then look at her with innocent eyes. And is Lyra, Mama? Lyra froze. Ethan, holding a basket of apples, looked at her. Their eyes met. He didn't speak, but his smile was enough. Lyra knelt, touched Eli's cheek and whispered, If you want me to be, then yes. The boy grinned and hugged her legs. Ethan's chest felt light, too light, like hope. That night the stars were bright again. Ethan and Lyra stood near the fence watching the sky. Do you think, Lyra asked slowly, peace will last? Ethan didn't answer immediately. I don't know. Maybe not, Lyra turned to him confused. Then how do you live without fear? He looked at her, eyes gentle. I don't. I just choose love anyway. Lyra's heart tightened, and before fear could stop her, she stepped closer, so close that their shoulders touched. So close that she could hear his heartbeat. Ethan looked at her. She looked at him. No words were needed. The wind moved through the grass, and under the quiet sky, two broken souls slowly learned, not just how to survive, but how to stay. The early morning light entered gently through the window, spreading a golden glow across the small home. Arik stood in the doorway, quietly watching Lyra and the children at the dining table. Lyra was helping little Noah tie his shoelaces, while Hannah carefully placed bowls of warm porridge on the table. Their laughter was soft, their smiles unforced, like they had all finally learned what peace felt like. Arik's heart felt full, fuller than he ever imagined it could. He whispered to himself, This is what family means." Lyra looked up and saw him standing there. Her eyes softened. Once those eyes were always filled with guilt and fear, because she could not bear children of her own. But now they were filled with something new, belonging. She remembered the day she told Arik the truth, breaking inside as she said she could never give him a child. And she remembered his gentle smile as he replied, "Good. I've already got enough kids for both of us." That one sentence had changed her life. After breakfast, the children grabbed their backpacks, ready for school. Little Maya ran up to Lyra and hugged her tightly. "Will you be here when we come back?" she asked. Lyra knelt, resting her hand on the girl's cheek. "I will always be here," she said softly. "Maybe not by blood, but I am your mother in every other way." Maya grinned and ran off to join the others. Arik and Lyra walked them to the gate. As the children disappeared into the distance, Lyra felt a soft wind touch her face. She closed her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider in this world. She felt like she was home. "Do you really think they see me as their mother?" she asked quietly. Arik smiled, placing a hand gently over hers. "They don't just see you as their mother, Lyra. They feel you are their mother. In this house, love is more powerful than blood." Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Their small home became a place of stories, laughter, homework messes, burnt cookies, and whispered goodnights. Sometimes Lyra still cried quietly, but now her tears were different, not from pain, but from being overwhelmed by love. Each child in their own way began calling her Mom. The first time it slipped from little Noah's mouth, Lyra froze. The word sank into her heart like warm sunlight melting the last piece of ice. She hugged him so tightly that he laughed and said he couldn't breathe. One evening, during a soft rain, Arik and Lyra stood on the porch while the children played inside. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing me, even when I was broken." Arik shook his head lightly. "No," he said. "You were never broken. You were just waiting for a place to belong, and we were waiting for you." She closed her eyes, letting his words heal the parts of her heart that still trembled. Years passed. The children grew taller, wiser, braver, but they never forgot. Never forgot the alien woman who became their mother without ever giving birth. Never forgot the human man who taught them that love was not limited by the body, but born in the soul. On a quiet evening many years later, the family sat around the fire in the backyard. The stars shimmered above, the same stars that once watched Lyra fall to earth alone and hopeless. Now under those same stars she sat surrounded by laughter, warmth, and the sound of small hands resting in hers. Arik looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "This is our story," he said softly. "Not perfect, but ours." Lyra smiled, tears in her eyes. "A family not made by blood," she whispered, "but by love." And under the endless sky with hearts finally at peace, they knew this was forever.